I screamed louder than I ever had before. My son had just slammed a kettle of boiling water, and it splashed onto my neck. I ran, shaking and whimpering, and all I could think was, I can't do this anymore. If you've ever felt scared of your own child, if you've wondered if it's okay to feel that way, if you've whispered to yourself, this feels like abuse, but I don't know if I'm allowed to say that, then this episode is for you. Today, I'm sharing what it's like to live with a child whose violence or controlling behavior can leave you traumatized, exhausted, and ashamed. We're going to talk about what your nervous system is doing, why this is trauma, and how you can begin to feel safer again, body, mind, and soul. I'm also going to share tools, research, and something I believe deep down, that there's meaning in all of this, even if you can't see it yet. I screamed the loudest scream I had ever screamed as I turned around in disbelief, looking at my son while feeling the burning on my neck. My son was in one of his multi-hour rages and had already punched a few holes in the walls and headbanged against this glass French door and got a cut in his head. He was beyond gone. I didn't recognize my son. Where was he? Then suddenly he came into the kitchen where I was standing, and he took the tea kettle, which still had boiling hot water in it, and slammed it against the counter, making the hot water fly out onto my neck as I turned to shield my face. I screamed loud. I was in shock. And then I dropped to a whimper, running upstairs, frantic and whimpering at the same time. I can't go on like this anymore, God. Please help me. I don't know what to do, I heard myself saying. Without even realizing it, my body moved to grab the phone, and I heard the words in my head. It's time. He needs to go to the hospital. We need help. We can't do this anymore. And within seconds, I was calling 911 while my hands and body were shaking with fear. This is the reality of many parents who live with a child who can become extremely violent. You try everything possible to help your child calm down, but they just can't. The panic takes them over and they lash out on you. There were many times my son had lashed out on my husband and myself, hitting, punching, biting, spitting, throwing hard objects. Our only saving grace was that he had low muscle tone and wasn't very strong, so we could withstand the blows even if they still did hurt. But the act of throwing things at us felt more dangerous to me, and then becoming all consumed with trying to protect the house from being destroyed was exhausting. I was constantly teetering between, I can't take anymore, and this is my child. I can't call the police on him. This is the cold, harsh reality that many of us parents with hypersensitive high needs kids live with, especially if you have a PDA autistic child or a child with ODD, oppositional defiance disorder, whose threat system gets activated so easily. We go between feeling like I'm being abused by my own child to then feeling shame for feeling this way, and then wondering, I must be doing something wrong for it to be this bad. The fear and even the terror is so real, and the shame is so real. And it's so hard to reach out for help because you know the systems won't be able to help your child anyway. All they can do is take your child and give you some reprieve, only to add more trauma load to your child's system and send them home in worse shape than how you sent them in. And this is the reality of most systems. Okay, so this is the hardest position to be in. And I'm here to tell you, you're not alone in this. I get it. This is the hardest part of parenting a high needs child. The violence is real, and the threat against your livelihood, both your emotional and your physical safety, feels very real. It feels very real. And this is your child. That is the most challenging, confusing, and mind effing part of all of this. As a mother, it is so hard to even take in that you could fear your own child. It's so fundamentally against how we are wired to feel toward our children. And it creates this feeling of this kind of like this split in the brain because there cannot be integration between both of these feelings when it comes to your child. So today, I really want to help this experience be named so that you can make sense of what's happening in your nervous system and feel understood deeply and help yourself feel safer with your child. So let's start by naming the thing no one wants to say. Sometimes it feels like your child is abusing you. But here's the truth. They're not an abuser in the way we typically understand the word. Their intent is not to harm you. Their nervous system is in a panic state and they're trying to survive. But just because it's not intentional does not mean it's not traumatic. So when someone screams at you or hits you or throws things or tries to control every move you make, it doesn't matter if they're your child. Your body still registers danger or even life threat. Your brain doesn't rationalize, oh, it's just my 9-year-old. Your brain goes into fight, flight, or freeze options. And when this happens over and over again, it accumulates. And this is what trauma is. Too much, too fast, too often, with no way to fully recover. If this feels like abuse to you, that's not because you're weak. There's nothing wrong with that. It's because your nervous system reads it that way automatically. So remember, this is not under your conscious control. This is the survival system doing what it is designed to do. And when your body registers danger from the person you love the most, your own child, the dissonance can feel unbearable. So let's talk about why this is especially hard for mothers. So here's the conundrum. How do you process fear when the source of your fear is your child, the one you love most? As a mother, your brain is biologically wired to nurture, protect, and bond with your child. So when your child becomes the source of threat, it creates a kind of neural dissonance. Your brain can't compute both truths at the same time. One part of you is in fight, flight, freeze, wanting to run or hide or dissociate. And another part of you is in caregiving, wanting to move toward your child to help them calm down. This split creates deep internal conflict, confusion, and shame. It's no wonder you might dissociate, shut down, or feel frozen. It's not just the behavior, it's the betrayal of your most primal instincts, which is to care for and love your child. So you're not crazy for struggling with this. Your brain is trying to reconcile the irreconcilable. And that's where nervous system education becomes so important. So when your child is in a rage, their nervous system is hijacked by threat. So they're in a sympathetic fight flight state of attacking, screaming, using aggression or control because they don't feel safe and they feel threatened at a subconscious level. Okay, so a lot of the time it's not conscious, subconscious. And when this happens repeatedly, your own nervous system gets conditioned into chronic stress responses. You may find yourself bracing all day, constantly on edge, scanning for danger, even when things seem calm. And over time, this can lead to complex PTSD, which is post-traumatic stress disorder, where your system is always anticipating harm, even in moments of peace. Your body doesn't trust safety anymore, and it lives in hypervigilance. And unlike other trauma survivors, you don't get to leave the source of the trauma. And here's what's so hard. Okay, you can't fully rest because the danger lives in your home. So, this is what makes trauma from a child's violence different from other traumas. It's ongoing, unpredictable, and deeply confusing because love and fear live side by side. So let's talk about how this mirrors other high stress environments like war zones. Because I don't know about you, but I've often felt like I'm living in a war zone and I'm just waiting for the next bomb to drop. So I want to say this respectfully, and I also want to say that this is validated by research as well. There are parallels between parenting a violent, high needs child and living in a war zone or abusive household. And these parallels are real and they're also validated by research. So in war zones, people live in constant threat. They learn to predict patterns, minimize damage, and shift their behaviors and reactions so they can survive. The same is true for parents like us. A parent I read about said she would walk on eggshells all day just to keep her child from exploding. This was my experience too, and I'm sure it is yours as well. Another said she would text her partner to hide certain objects before her child came home, just in case. This was also my experience, always going around the house to see what my son could grab and what he could throw that could harm us or what he could throw and break. And so I would be constantly going around locking things up daily. So these are survival strategies, just like in a war zone. And the nervous system doesn't distinguish between threats from outside the home or inside the home. So when the threat comes from somebody you love and someone who depends on you, it's even more disorganizing for the brain. That's why so many of us feel shame. We think this shouldn't feel like abuse. But what your body knows is it does. And until we name that, we can't begin to heal it. So, one of the hardest parts of this experience is feeling that this is inescapable. You can't walk away. You're their parent. You can't force change. Your child's nervous system is fragile and often developmentally delayed. And if you force change, they get worse. And then support systems often don't help, and they even re-traumatize not only yourself, but your child too, especially when neurodiversity or PDA is misunderstood. So when your nervous system feels like it can't fight or flee the situation, then it drops to a felt sense that this is inescapable and my only option is to freeze and give up. So just remember that this is all happening automatically and unconsciously, okay? None of this is conscious until you recognize it and you notice what's coming up, and then it becomes more conscious. But otherwise, it's all happening automatically, unconsciously. You don't get to choose, your survival system chooses for you. And then this can lead to this inescapable feeling, constantly feeling like I'm trapped, this is inescapable. This can lead to what trauma experts call learned helplessness, where the nervous system stops looking for escape and then drops into more of a collapse. And this is the dorsal vagal state where you feel freeze, numbness, hopelessness. And when this state becomes chronic, it starts to shape your beliefs. You may start thinking, nothing will ever change, or I'm broken, or my child will never be okay, or I'm a failure, or that feeling of, what's the point? I'm just feeling like you want to give up. So that's why one of the first steps in healing is to give your system back some sense of safety and choice. So safety and choice. So even if the safety is not there externally or the choices are limited, okay? And we will explore soon how to feel some safety and agency in this podcast in this very hard situation that you're in. But first, let's look at the research that validates our experiences and helps you understand more deeply that you're not alone in this. So, research shows that what you're going through is real and valid, even if it's not widely talked about. So, a 2023 Frontiers in Psychology study found that mothers exposed to repeated trauma, such as interpersonal violence or caregiving in extreme behavioral situations, often develop PTSD or post traumatic stress disorder like symptoms, including emotional numbing, chronic fear responses, and inability to rest. Then there's a UK-based CAPVA study, so CAPVA, which stands for Child to Parent Violence and Abuse. They documented firsthand accounts of mothers hiding in closets or locking themselves in bedrooms while their children raged. One mother reported her 13-year-old son destroyed the entire kitchen while she waited, terrified for it to end. Okay, and then in Psychiatric Times, researchers emphasized how caregivers of children with aggressive behaviors are at increased risk for immune dysregulation, chronic fatigue, and heightened trauma responses due to the unrelenting nature of their caregiving stress. I know I experienced a lot of chronic health issues on this journey, and I'm still healing from them now. Then there's another study on children with OCD and ASD. So my son has OCD as well as ASD and PDA. And so this study showed that children with OCD and ASD showed that parents often reported symptoms of trauma themselves, especially when rituals turned aggressive or controlling behavior escalated to violence. Okay, so these findings affirm what you may be experiencing: living in chronic fear, overwhelm, and the inability to relax. It's not just about parenting stress, it's trauma. And it deserves to be treated with the same compassion and seriousness. So, what do people do? So, I just want to shift a little bit here, really understand what do people do when they live under threat for the long haul? Because this is the question I always ask myself. And I went researching high and low about what do people in war zones do? What do people who live in abusive homes do? Like, how did they get through it? How do they, not just survive, but how do they end up okay? So what do people do when they live under threat for the long haul? So let's look at what helps. Okay, so when we look to research on war zones and natural disasters and long-term abuse, we find key protective factors that help people survive chronic trauma. So Viktor Frankl, he's an author and a Holocaust survivor and a psychiatrist. And he wrote in one of his books, when we are no longer able to change a situation, we are challenged to change ourselves. And his core message was that the human spirit can survive the unthinkable when it finds meaning, choice, and inner freedom. Okay, so this is what I held on to. I kept coming back to Viktor Frankl. Show me the way. I want to not just survive. I want to thrive. I want to be okay with all of this. And then there are other studies really support this. Survivors in war zones often survive by finding structure and predictability in their environment, practicing moment-to-moment regulation, including grounding exercises and breath work, staying connected to support systems, and avoiding isolation. That's a hard one for us because we often become more and more isolated the harder time we're having. And then using meaning-making practices, whether spiritual or purpose-driven. So these same practices can help you survive and eventually heal. Okay, so trauma isn't just about what happens, right? It's about how your nervous system perceives what happens, and it's about what gets stuck in your nervous system and doesn't get a chance to be expressed and released. And these practices, they help you to metabolize what you've been through so it doesn't become who you are. So now let's talk about what you can actually do in your day-to-day life to feel safer and reclaim a sense of agency. Okay, so to make the situation better, three core concepts can help you feel less helpless. Okay, and those are context, choice, and connection. I've talked about this in another podcast. So these three things help the nervous system to feel safe. So it's important to build these into challenging situations and into your daily life as much as you can. So context, it means understanding what's really happening, the who, what, when, where, why, and how of the situation. So instead of, thinking my child is violent and abusive, you can reframe it to, well, I know what's really happening here. The truth is my child is having a panic attack and is completely dysregulated. So knowing the why, their neurological, emotional, and developmental triggers really helps you to shift more out of fear and into clarity. Okay. So in these situations, context helps you bring in clarity. And that is so needed for you to be clear on what this behavior of your child is so it doesn't feel as threatening to you. And then also knowing, though, what you are going to do and how you will do it when these violent situations arise. So the nervous system likes to know that you have a plan to feel more safe. So, in our own home, we made a safety plan that when my son started to get really dysregulated, everyone knew what to do, where to go, how to stay safe, and when to call for help. And sometimes it meant for me, it meant staying quiet and close by. I had to make sure he stayed safe. Other times it meant protecting fragile things or removing items that he could harm himself with. Um, when your child is in a rage, the last thing you want it to feel like, which it does tend to feel like a lot, is that like you're scrambling. You don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. And you're scrambling, right? Because then you're like, you're in this chaos and you want to move to a more structure, more predictable, and help your nervous system know, I know what to do in this situation, even if it feels hard. Okay, so that's context, and you can bring that into your situation, create a safety plan that everybody's on board with, even all the siblings understand. If they're too young, then, obviously you're going to be the one to know exactly what to do. And then there's choice. Okay. The second thing the nervous system needs to feel safe is choice. And choice means like you feel like you have options and then you have some autonomy and control. And so you're staying in that place of agency and in your power to handle the situation requires feeling like that, like you have some choice in what you can do. Right. So the key here is to focus your intention on what choices you have that can keep everyone safe and really take your attention off of trying to get your child to end the behavior. Because, in these situations, when you go after your child, and you try to get them to stop, they just get worse. Um, Obviously, you have to keep them safe. So keep that in mind. But have some choices ready, to keep your child and your sibling and yourself safe. And focus your choices mostly on what you can do for yourself and to help yourself feel safer in this situation. So I always knew that my choice was always to help myself. I could regulate myself, I could help myself. And that was the choice I was making. If I could not change him, survival system will always want to try to change what's outside of you. And when you move into your own agency and power, it's about moving inward and understanding that the only, control you really have is over yourself once you become aware of what's happening and can bring that cues of safety and compassion to yourself. Okay, then the third thing is connection. And this means staying connected to yourself and your regulation tools. Okay, whether it's noticing your internal state, like I just talked about, whispering calming words to yourself, reframes, doing like tense and release to help release some of the activation that's accumulating, stress load in your body. You can do tense and then release, tense and then release, and shaking it off, doing a whole body shake off, or putting an ice pack on your face if you feel like you're going to panic or go into a rage. Okay, so these are the cues of safety that your body needs to survive, and you can connect with yourself and you can bring those cues of safety to yourself. And then you can also connect, if you have a partner there that you could connect with. Usually in these times you can't, because you're both just, trying to manage the situation, especially if they're siblings. But you could also, the other thing to connect to is if you have, a spiritual practice, you can connect to a spiritual figure, because that can help a lot as well. Okay. So then afterwards, what do you do afterwards? This is very vital. And this is aftercare is what you need to engage in. So after a violent episode, it's so important to not move on and get busy doing things. It's so important to let yourself fully calm down, okay? Shake your body to release the activation. Cry, okay, to release the grief and all the sadness. Rest if you can. Orient. Do this practice of orienting, coming into the present, noticing 5 to 10 things in the room that are neutral or pleasant. Allow yourself to take those in and remind your nervous system it's over now. We're safe. Give yourself those cues of safety. I like to put a hand on my heart, a hand on my face. Just give myself these cues of safety and care. It's over. We're safe. Okay? This helps your nervous system to not stay stuck thinking that you're still in the situation. Okay. And then when your child is ready, repair with love. Okay. Remind them what you did doesn't change how I feel about you. I love you and we're okay. Give them that message. And then outside of intense moments in daily life, it's really important to create small moments of joy and shared control, letting them lead a game, explore with you or cuddle. These help their nervous system feel safe over time. They help them get the more positive messaging from you, more than the negative messaging that we can inadvertently send to our kids, because when they're in meltdowns a lot, we can often just be stuck sending them our negative messaging. So we want to create pockets of time where we can create safety for them and send them our positive messaging of how much we love them and enjoy being with them and delight in them. And then over time, as your child's nervous system, feels safe, as they develop more, they can develop more skills, then true behavioral change can take root. But for some of us, that can take years. So really understanding that this is a long-term game of building safety for them, but especially starting with yourself. So I also want to mention that, like, to really remember this, okay, that most importantly, there are 2 ingredients that encode trauma and then make you feel like you're stuck and helpless and trapped in a traumatic situation. And those 2 things are feeling like you have no choice, okay, and feeling like the danger is inescapable. Okay, so those are what are the clinchers for trauma and encoding trauma. So it's important to realize that even if your choices are limited or your choices feel awful, like shitty choice number 1 and then there's shitty choice number 2, it's important to name them and still see them as choice. And also to tell yourself, I could leave, but I'm choosing to stay. Okay, so that is a truth, that you could easily leave and abandon your child, right? But you're choosing to stay. And that's so important, because it's not like I have no choice, I have to stay, this is my child, but it really is, you're choosing on some level, you're choosing to stay. And that helps you to reclaim your own agency, which is what your nervous system needs to feel safe again. So much of the time, the feeling of being abused or helpless, it really isn't just about what's happening now. Okay. So we're not going to discredit what's happening now because it's real. But a lot of the time, it there's past traumas getting activated in the present. And then this compounds the present day reaction. So in my case, my parents never hit me or abused me, but I discovered through my own deep healing work that I had experienced pre-verbal trauma at age 1. I nearly died. I had a near-death experience. And that traumatic experience left me with a deep and unconscious belief that I was a victim and that my life wasn't safe. Okay. And so when my son he raged and controlled my every move, I had in this encoding in my amygdala of only the felt sense of that memory. And so whatever felt like in the present environment, my son was triggering this felt sense in my amygdala. It felt like my life was being threatened again. Like it felt like I was going to die. And then I couldn't understand, why then I would go into this full-blown rage or collapse in a ball until I was able to uncover this trauma and see the link. Okay, so my child wasn't just triggering me in present day. He was like, it wasn't just to do with the present day reality of his intenseness. He was awakening a much younger part of me that had once felt very helpless and alone. Okay, so for many parents, this is why it feels like your child is the perpetrator. That's what I felt like. I felt like my child was this perpetrator that was doing this to me on purpose and was attacking me. And so he really felt like a perpetrator to my survival system. And, it feels so crazy because even when you know logically that they're just dysregulated, you can't control this feeling, this felt sense in your body that makes it feel like you're the victim again, they're the perpetrator. So our trauma parts don't know time, right? And if you're finding yourself flooded or raging or shutting down, it's not just about the moment. It's your nervous system remembering something that your mind may not remember. And as Dr. Bessel van der Kolk, who is a leading trauma expert, says, and he wrote in his book, and this is the title of this book, what he says is that the body keeps the score. Okay, so your body is remembering what your mind may not. So that's why deep healing, and feeling safe in the face of your child can often require trauma reprocessing work and at the body level so that you can separate past from the present. And I know in my case, it made a big difference in how I reacted to my son's violence after I reprocessed this pre-verbal trauma and all the aspects of it. And then finally feeling this felt sense of safety in my body at a level I had never felt before. And then sometimes for a deeper peace, we need to zoom out even further. So I want to pan out for a moment and let's look at the bigger picture of things. And this is, for me, this is from the soul perspective, okay? I want to offer a perspective that's deeply meaningful to me and one that helped me to really make sense of everything. Because I remember asking and even arguing with the universe, with God, why is this happening? It wasn't supposed to be this way. Like I always felt like it was never supposed to be this hard. Why is it this hard? And that question led me to start reading books on past life regression, which explore the idea that our souls choose certain life circumstances. Okay, so we choose these experiences before we come to this earth. And we choose these experiences because we know that they will help us learn and evolve. And I came to believe that my son and I chose to experience this together so that we could grow, heal, and remember who we truly are beyond our bodies and our brains. We could remember our true selves, our souls. So eventually I ended up having a past life regression session myself because I really wanted to see like what happened before. And why did I sign up for this? And I ended up seeing lifetimes where I had been with my son before. And of course, in different roles, not as mother and child. Like he was my father in one life, and he was actually my husband in another life. And so in this like hypnosis state, right, they take you to these past life, you end up being taken to these past life experiences. And um, and I really I began to understand why I was up against these challenges in this lifetime with my son. And I share this with you not to convince you of anything, right? Because you're going to have your own belief systems. You may have a certain religion or spiritual practice you follow or not. You may not even believe in any of that, and that's okay. But I bring this up because, in case you do, like it may bring you some comfort. In case you're open to this, it may bring you some comfort or meaning, right? Or a sense of connection to something greater. And to some of you, this may feel out there. And that's okay. You can take it or leave it. But for me, believing that there's a bigger picture to our pain and suffering has helped me to, hold all of this experience with more compassion and more grace. It has also helped me to feel like less of a victim, as I knew deep down and I saw from these past life regression sessions that I had chosen this path so I could learn and grow. So it felt like to me I had some agency in choosing this experience, and that helped me to not feel like, a victim in all of this. So whether or not that perspective resonates with you, it's okay. But I want to close with a message that I hope that everyone can take in. So after everything we've talked about, after all the intensity and heartbreak, here's what I want you to hold on to most. If this is your life right now, I want you to know you're not alone, you're not failing, and you're not crazy for feeling like this feels like abuse. Your nervous system is trying to keep you safe. And even in the darkest moments, you are doing something profoundly sacred. You're loving a child who is struggling while fighting to stay whole yourself. Okay. But here's what I want to leave with you, and something deeper still. Even when it feels like there's no way out, you have the power to create space. Even when it feels like you have no choices, you can reclaim agency. One breath, one small action at a time. Even when your body is screaming, I can't do this anymore, you have the ability to bring in cues of safety, to regulate yourself, to stay present, to rise again and again. This is not easy, okay? And this is not quick, but I want you to know that it is possible. And when you begin to bring that sense of safety and choice back into your nervous system, however slowly it is and however imperfectly it is, you begin to realize something profound, that your power was never about control. That's your survival system, right? Your power is truly about you coming back to presence. And it's about discovering the part of you that exists beyond survival, the part of you that can meet the storm, not because you're unaffected, but because you've remembered who you truly are. So this is what we're here to learn. This is the deeper calling beneath this unimaginable challenge that you're experiencing, that we're experiencing together. It's to awaken to our true capacities, to our resilience, to our true self, our soul. So you have the power to bring this to yourself. Not all at once, okay? Don't put that pressure on yourself. And not all the time and not forever, but in this moment and the next one, okay? And that is enough for today. So if this podcast resonated with you, please comment and let me know. And please share with others so that they can feel seen and valid in their experiences too. We are all in this together.